I'm not Lord Kelvin, obviously, but I will try to make EMF measurements real today in this presentation. And last year, after the GSMA workshop, we showed 2 slides, and people were frustrated and asked to have a more detailed session. And so that's why we are here today. So I will try to summarize 700 pages of standards into a short presentation, which is technical enough to address the requirements, but general enough to be, let's say, attractive to everybody. So why are we here today? The standardization activity around base station exposure assessment is leveraging on 2 standards. IEC 62232, which edition 3 has been published in 2022. This is a reference document that is applicable in many countries of the world, and it's translated into a few other, let's say, other standards. This edition 3 has been published in 2022, and we expect a new edition 4 to be published later this year. The technical content will be the same, it's just that we are correcting some minor errors, and we are also aligning the terminology with the technical report, which we are currently finishing. So IEC Technical Report 62669. Current published version is from 2019, and we are looking for publishing the edition 2 in beginning or half of 2025. So what are we talking about? We are talking about base station, RF exposure assessment, so compliance boundary. As you see on the left, you see a nice 5G antenna with beamforming, and the yellow bubbles are the various beams that are possible to trigger on this. You see in the middle aerial deployment, what happens when we install really the base station into the environment. And on the right, you see that when we measure the transmitted signal, it's varying a lot. It's varying a lot in time and in space, and we will discuss later what is the impact of these variations into the assessment. As we discussed briefly in the beginning, IEC 62232 is really the baseline and the best reference that is used worldwide. It's implemented in CNELEC standards, so for compliance with RD directive, so EN 50385 is the standard for CE marking, so for product compliance assessment, and 50401 is the standard for product installation. So what happens when an operator puts the base station into operation? And ITU, so this is for basically all the European community country compliance. ITU is also an important reference, and since June this year, it's integrating all the benefits of IEC 62232 version of 2022, in particular in the document K52 for global compliance assessment, and K100 for measurement of radio frequency fields from base stations. So standardization is, so I'm here to represent all the work that has been done by MT3 members. So we took a picture of all MT3 members participating today, but here is the full set of contributors. We were working together and meeting in Paris for the plenary of TC106 last week. There was about 40 people at attending MT3 meetings, and it was very fruitful, and we really like the collaborative spirit of the work that is important to develop good standards that are endorsed by largely over the world. So we have 85 members registered to MT3, and they represent 21 countries from the most recent update, and it's been growing over the last 10 years, which is a good sign. So let's go into the deep dive now. So IEC 62232 scope is usually what the starting point when you enter into a big standard like this. And I just took some extracts, which are most relevant. The frequency range, so we address base stations, transmitters in the range of 110 MHz up to 300 GHz. And there are telecom stations now in the range of 200 GHz already developed or experimented. So we are using the whole range of the standard. And what is important for base stations, since we deploy base station in the field, we have to take into account not only what the base station will radiate itself, but also the ambient sources. And ambient sources can be the other base stations on the same rooftop, but they can be also the broadcast transmitter around, etc. So the range of frequency for ambient sources is larger. It's starting at 100 kHz. So what we specify, we split the approach in 3 main domains. We specify methods for product compliance. So product compliance means when you put a base station, you need to get the CE marking for Europe or FCC or RSS or whatever in the country of deployment. And this is mandatory to be able to put a product on the market. So that's the first pillar. Second pillar is when you install the base station on a rooftop, before putting it into operation, what does the operator have to do in terms of compliance assessment? And that's what we second part of our scope. And the third part is when I am a regulator or when I am anybody, I want to check that the exposure level at one place is below the limits. How do I do, and what are the methods to do it? And all this can be done by power density, electric field strength, SAR measurements, or simulations. And we describe both in the document. Part 5 of the standard, we try to summarize the flow of events and how it's a quick guide to show first users where they can find the various bits and pieces that will be useful for implementing the standard. So first, you choose one of the 3 pillars I described below: product compliance, product installation, and in situ. Then in each category, there are some equipment which are very specific, low power or whatever, which can be deemed to be compliant without any testing. And we start to define the principles for this to avoid complex situations when it's not necessary. And then in the standard, we have different methods. So methods for measurements, methods for computation, and all what is related in terms of uncertainty analysis, in terms of how to complete the measurement and the assessment report, etc. So all this is described in the standard step by step. And of course, I will not go in all details, but I will show you some of those steps and provide some examples every time I can. And these examples have been aggregated into this technical report, 62669. it's not a standard, it's a technical report. It has no mandatory implementation aspects, but it's providing what generally we call the best engineering type, and or the good practice or whatever. And since this is not always straightforward to use the standard, this good practice can help implementation. So here is a full list from the technical report that will be published at the end of this year. And they are classified per evaluation type. And I will go through a few of those examples during the presentation, but here is the full list. Let's start with product compliance. So product compliance is about establishing a compliance boundary in front of the base station. And the methods are described in details. And what is specified is that the manufacturer, when he's doing this assessment, shall do it either, well, both, in fact, shall be both based on the rated maximum of the power. So that's the maximum that the product can, power that the product can transmit. But with the new editions and with 5G, it's now specified that this can be done also with one or more of the actual transmitted power that are available, using power reduction factors which depend on the base station, the implementation, etc. So you see on the screen an example of 5G antenna array. The big bubble is what we call an envelope. So it's the physical boundary of all beam. Whatever the combination of antenna element weighting function you can use, you will never exceed the big yellow bubble. And this is what is generally used for compliance assessment. And you do the calculation of this yellow bubble, and then you translate it into a compliance distances, so which can take the place of shape of parallelepipedic box, or things a little bit more sophisticated to allow deployment near a window or whatever. And here are a few examples of product compliance reports from the TR. So on the left, you have a small cell. So for small cells, we do SAR measurements, like mobile phones, basically. We put them on a phantom and we measure SAR, and it results in compliance distances that are generally 0 or close to 1 centimeter or very small, so that they can be deployed close to where people live. On the right, you have an antenna array for 5G, and here the compliance distances that are calculated are more in the range of 25 meters in front if you take the rated maximum power, or 11 meters if you take into account the actual max power reduction of 6 dB, which is generally accepted. So this is the kind of reports that we are providing. Now let's move to the second part of our standard, which is product installation. And as you saw on the big flowchart, we start by first checking if the product installation fulfills some of the simplified installation criteria. So if it's a small cell, which is touch compliant, so you can touch it and the SAR is still below the limit, it's called what we call installation class E0, means that it's something that can be installed by anybody. There is no constraint, and it can be, and this is generally indicated in the installation manual of the product. Then we have other classes. So E2 means that the compliance distance, the transmitted power is small, so less than 2 watt EIRP. And then we have, let's say, as we improve, so we give a number E something. E is for EIRP, so EIRP 2 watts, EIRP 10 watt, EIRP 100 watt. And for each category, it provides you simplified formulas that can be used for calculation. And the last category is E+, where we can use the formulas provided on the right in order to calculate the minimum installation height without any need to do any other testing. Installation height and compliance distance in front on this side. So this is a simplified approach which does not require any knowledge on the EMF assessment, no big tool, etc. And these formulas, for example, are used in Indian regulation. So what we do here is really used. It's used in ITU, it's used in Indian regulation and others. So that's important, even if for complex base stations like 5G antennas, we would probably prefer to use real models than these simplified formulas. So in the technical report, we translated this technical table E0, E2, E10, E100, E+, into an infographics that has been included in a few documents from the Small Cells Forum, GSMA, and ITU K100 has it as well. So it provides you what are the criteria for installing base stations, and they have been considered also in some of the regulations around small cells which are in place. So you see the comparison between the standard, which is technical tables with all the criteria, and this is the implementation part that is more friendly, and that's the purpose of the technical report. So let's go now to the general process for implementing product assessment compliance. I put some extracts of the text, but basically what you need to remember is that for product installation, you take the transmission from the base station itself, you check other sources around, how they contribute. You consider the configured max of the base station and or the actual maximum power, taking into account the traffic variation. And again, this can be done by measurements or computation. And practically, most of the time, computations are now used for such situation. I will not go through the flowchart, but that's a reference of how precise we need to be in order to avoid that there are misinterpretation in the implementation. And here are two case studies from the technical reports that can be used. On the left, you see a centimeter wave antenna and a millimeter wave antenna on the same monopole. And you see the description of the site in the computer model. And you see the representation of the compliance boundary. So the yellow part is using general public limit, and the orange part is using the workers limit. When you put a base station on a rooftop, you always take care of the two aspects, general public for everybody, and workers exposure for those people climbing on the mast or doing some maintenance of the ventilation and all these things that you can find on a rooftop. On the right-hand side, you have a similar case study using a different tool. And what is specific for this modeling is that it takes into account the actual maximum approach, which is a capability of 5G antennas to control the signal in some directions, which we call segments, and not in others. So you see on the left the various beams representing the compliance boundary, which are controlled on the direction towards the nearby building. And this is done to ensure compliance with EMF limits, but they are not controlled in the directions inside the street where there is no need for control because there is nobody exposed. And this is, these are situations that are now possible thanks to 62232 version that is currently published. And you see between the left and the right picture of figure 20, on the left you have 5G signal only, and on the right you have 5G plus 4G plus other existing transmitters on the site, and there is some difference in the shape of the patterns. So that's very important to be considered. And now let's go to the actual maximum approach, which we have been talking about since this morning, but now let's go into some of the details. Since time, we know that the traffic is varying in time. During the day, there are periods with high traffic. During the night, there are periods with high traffic as well until midnight, and then there are periods with very low traffic at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning. And this variability was always discussed in the committee, but it was not appropriately taken into consideration. And that's in technical report 62669 edition 2017 that we started to introduce and to formalize this aspect of the variability in time. And so that was based on two papers published in 2017 by Tors et al. And Baraka et al. And the references are here. That's kind of precursors of implementing the approach. These papers were using 3GPP-based simulation of channel traffic around base station, and doing hundreds, thousands of various simulations with users arbitrarily spread over the base station. They showed that statistically, taking a 95 percentile, the transmitted power or the transmitted EIRP does not exceed 1/4 of the maximum possible EIRP or power. And it means that, and we showed with this modeling study, this publication showed that when you do a compliance assessment based on the maximum, you overestimate the compliance distance by a factor 2, because the distance is the square root of the power, to make it short. So if you can reduce the power by 4, you reduce the compliance distance by a factor 2. And this is significant. Having a compliance distance of 25 meters or 10 makes a big difference when you install base stations. And after these two publications, many other publications have been done. And the factors, the correction factors, what we call the power reduction factor, FPR, in blue on the slide, varies, but it's always in the same range. It's between 0.1 and 0.3, so between -9 dB for those talking in dBs, -9 to -6 or -4 dB. And this range can be assessed using modeling studies, and you will find in the technical report some at least these two case studies. Original case studies are developed in more detail. The rest you can look into the literature. There has been also a few measurement case studies confirming these simulations, and they are listed here. There was one by Werner, one by Colombi, and you will find the full list again of 5 in the technical report. And in the technical report, we also provide in clause 12 some counters recordings of base stations, where you see the big variability of the values over a day or during the day, and comparing one day to the other, showing that the CDF, taking the 95 percentile on this particular measured study, is around 6 dB below the threshold, which is confirming the values in the modeling studies. And this provides, this combination of modeling and measurement provides a good, let's say, trust on the results, and it's important to justify, it's an important rationale to justify the implementation of the method when you have so good correlation between modeling and simulations and measurements. So based on these studies, we started to establish the principles for compliance. So this is a flowchart which was proposed by some regulators, and it was adopted by the amended and adopted by the committee. So first you collect power reduction factor from a CDF or whatever. You establish a threshold of power or EIRP for the base station that shall not be exceeded. And this threshold is below the maximum value that can be radiated. And then the base station is configured like that with the power reduction factors, and then you put it into operation and you use this power reduction factor for the site declaration, for the calculation, etc., as we have done before. And then when it is the base station is operating, you can monitor the EIRP or the power to check that it does not exceed the threshold that was established a priori. And this can be done using control features. So it's I usually take the example of a car speed limiter. It's exactly the same that is done with the base station today. When you put a speed limit at 130 or at 100 km per hour, even if you accelerate, you will never exceed 100 km per hour. And here with the base station, it's the same, except that it's not instantaneous. What we are controlling is the actual power or the actual EIRP, which is the value averaged over 6 minutes. So you can still exceed instantaneously the threshold as long as the averaged over 6 minutes, the value averaged over 6 minutes is not exceeded. So we have functions to monitor and to control this value, so that the threshold is never exceeded during operation. And this is the key requirement in IEC 62232. The threshold shall not be exceeded during operation, and that's also the key line that was taken in ITU and Senelec in their implementation guides. So here is an example. You recognize the part of the graphic that was used before, but here is a full extract from case study A related to implementation of the actual max approach. The graph above is single segment, so you have only all the space in front of the base station is taken together. On the left part, you have monitoring only, so there is no power reduction factor. And you see that during the recording time, we never reached the maximum, almost. So the maximum may have been reached if we had an infinite time of recording, which obviously never happens. And then we decided with this operator to put a threshold 6 dB below, like in the modeling case studies. And you observe that the shape of the signal almost never does not change. It's always the same 5G signal, which is transmitted over time. It is just that from time to time, there is a control function activated. That's the small red bars in seconds, showing when the control has been activated over this period. And so it's an implementation of the monitoring and control features that is now deployed in thousands of sites around the world, in many countries, many operators, etc. The second picture at the bottom is a recording of the simulation study we showed earlier with two segments. One is controlled. The one controlled is the dark blue, and the one is not controlled, it is the light blue. And same, the threshold is the green bar. And when we put 6 dB reduction factor like for single segment, we observe that there is no control at all still. And when we activate control with minus 8 dB, we start to observe some small control periods. So the dark blue is always below the threshold, and the light blue, the uncontrolled segment, is continuing to work as before. So the technical report provides more information on the details of the implementation. And this is a similar studies done by another member. Here they control with not with 2 segments, but with 8 segments. And you see on the right side, the dotted line is a 25% limit, 6 dB. And we observe that on each segment, so if each graph is on the right is one segment, and we observe that during the recording period, the 25% threshold was never exceeded. So all this, as I explained, comparison with the car speed limiter, we need to be sure that the features are MCF features, so monitoring and control features. MCF are working correctly. And this is why the document is planning some validation requirements. And when power or EIRP monitoring or control functions are implemented by the network, the reporting of the counter and the CDF is not mandatory if the feature has been validated. And so what we can show you is 3 examples of validation case studies. So case study A is shown on this graph. So here they installed on a parking place around the base station, a little bit like we will do later this afternoon. But in more visibility, of course, in better conditions. So they install a measurement probe in front of the base station. First, and that's one principle for all case studies, they establish the baseline. And baseline, we need to know what is the maximum that can be reached by this base station, even without control, even. So from the formula, what is the value that is the maximum? And this is called the baseline, and all the validation case studies start by this principle. And then they define different various test cases where they activate control in one way, where they change the traffic load, they change the number of segments, and so on and so forth. And you see in the middle blue column the various power reduction factors that they have been implemented. And on the right, the validation pass-fail criteria. Here, the configured value was 0.25, and they check that for each test case, they do not exceed 0.25 power reduction factor. This is another type of study that is introduced in the IEC 62232 report. They have a complement in the technical report, but For today, I prefer to show the original study. On the top, so the purple part is assessment of the measurement at full traffic. In red part, they increase the power instead of by 3 dB, for example, without any control feature. And then on the green part, they apply the power reduction factor equivalent to the increase of the power. And you can show that the level of transmission is back to the original state, which means that the feature is working appropriately and does not exceed the expected value. And this is the third case study for validation. So I take time on all this because that's critical for to be confident in the features. And so this is done in another environment, which can be either outdoor on the left, or it can be done also in an anechoic chamber with less influence of the environment. It starts with baseline assessment, test case A, on the left, where we show the full line is the threshold, the target, and the dotted line is the actual counter in light blue. And what we observe is that, so test case 1 is when we change power reduction factor. So first we implement 10 dB reduction, then 3 dB, then 6 dB. And we show that during the changes, after a small transition period of 10 to 15 minutes, the transmitted level of EIRP is matching the configured value. So that's the test case B, where we change the configuration of the power reduction factor. Test case number 2 is we put full load. We put a power reduction factor of, for example, 6 dB, and we change the load. So 10% load, very low load. So we are below the, sorry, I don't have a pointer, but that's down peaks on the under test case C. With low load, the level is below the threshold, and when we increase the load to 100%, we hit the threshold, and we never exceed it. And we do it twice to be sure there is no error. Test case D is load ramp. So we have a threshold, and we start with very low load on the base station, 10%, and we increase progressively. And we check at which level the threshold is obtained, and we stop here. And a recommendation that we are discussing in the technical report is that we finish with the baseline assessment to be sure that there was no drift between the beginning of the test and the end of the test. As an example, this test is taking 5 hours because we need to stay with, due to the 6-minute averaging time and the fact that at each step we need to wait 3 times the averaging time for stability. The overall process takes a few hours, and we are suggesting to discuss this in the committee, how to optimize this part. So this concludes product installation compliance, and now we move to the measurement part. Here I will be a little bit quicker because we will have the demo after. But basically, the standard describes how to take measurements using 2 types of what we call case A and case B measurements. Case A is using a broadband probe, and broadband is simple. It's simple when you walk around. It's easy to, and you will see later during the demo. It's easy. It's reacting it's easy to handle, etc. So when we do a measurement, for example, in this room, we would start with a case A measurement, which is measuring with a broadband probe and taking the maximum value in this area. The problem with broadband probes is that they take all the signals from all transmitters. So if you want to measure 4G, if you want to measure 5G, you cannot take. Sometimes when you are close to the limit, or when you want to go deeper into the analysis, you need to do a case B measurement. Case B measurement means that you take a frequency selective probe, so a spectrum analyzer connected to an isotropic probe, or a decoder in order to measure exactly the signal in one system particularly. And then with this you can do extrapolation, you can do a number of post-processing that is helping into doing an assessment that is really accurate. And so here are examples of case studies, measurement case studies. So on the left, you have case study A for small cells. It was a campaign done in France already. And you see the difference between case A and case B measurements. It's not so big in this case. And the measurement shows the difference when you are close to the base station or when you are 100 meters range. Case study B was done in Europe and South Africa, and with around different equipment, and they did some statistics. What's interesting is that if you take the statistics of measurement campaign B, it's very similar. The level is very similar to what was found in case study A. And every time the level is far below the limits. So you will find all the details in the technical report. This one is about millimeter wave. So it was done indoor. It's an example, but there are many in the technical report. What's interesting with this one is that we've been able to compare measurements and simulations. So the yellow dots are measured values and the green dots are simulated values. Simulation is generally interesting, not to provide an assessment, but to show where are the maxima. Provides you an indication where you have to look instead of scanning all the room. You know approximately in which area the maximum will be, and you can go straight to that point and do the assessment and take the spatial averaging part. Here is another one from Australia. So here they were generating heavy or typical traffic profiles. On top of it, it was representing heavy load from a family. And at the bottom, it is heavy load for game users, a lot very heavy demand, and so on and so forth. And they were measuring the exposure during one day or a few days. And what's remarkable in these measurements is that the level of exposure, even during the peaks of utilization, is always very low compared to the limit. You will find all the details in the technical report. This is a macro base station case study, and here again I took two, but there are many others in the technical report. The top one is interesting because they are comparing various measurement equipment, frequency selective and broadband. And they also confirm that the levels are below, and even when they activate full load with UEs connected, etc., which is the gray part of the graph, the level is still below the limit. We had a bit of discussion in the committee because the probes are very close to each other, which is not the usual way to do it. But the error was taken into the calculation of the comparison, so the standard is, the implementation is correct. Even if normally we only put one probe when doing such measurements. And below, it's another case study, so you will see the equipment behind. Here it's done very close to a base station, 5G base station, and the level at full traffic are still well below the limit. What is interesting is they find 2.5 volts per meter, and which is what we find here. When we will open the window in a few minutes and put the probe directly in line of sight of the base station around, we found something very similar. So that shows the reproducibility of such measurements. And then we have this question of extrapolation. What is important with beam steering is that when you measure, it may be that the beam is directed to another direction. And then it's difficult to extrapolate to the maximum. And this is the whole part of the 62232 standard, and I put here the extract. Extrapolation shall be performed from the measurement of a stable signal. And in fact, the good point is that in 4G or 5G signals, there are stable signals that are mandatory because they are used for many other purposes of the system. So they exist, and we try for EMF to take the maximum benefit out of these stable signals, which we call reference signals. And this is from the beginning. Even in GSM measurements, we were doing already extrapolation from BCCH reference signals. And the only difference is that with 5G, we have to take into account the OFTM signal, which is time and frequency dependent. So it's a little bit more complex, but once you get the equipment that is interpreting this correctly, it's straightforward. And that's the discussion we have, and that's what you will show later today. So that's the end of my presentation.